Welcome back to the deep dive. I was looking at my fitness tracker this morning.
Oh, yeah?
It told me my readiness score was like in the basement. My stress was high, and I basically needed to go back to bed.
Great.
But the weird thing was I actually felt fine. I felt energetic even. And it was just this jarring moment where the data on my wrist said one thing, and my actual lived experience said something completely different.
That is the perfect way to start today, because that little glitch, that tension between your watch and your body,
Yeah.
that is the defining tension of, I think, the modern world. We have the official map, the data, the charts, the diagnostic codes,
Right.
and then we have the messy, ambiguous territory of actually being alive.
And today's stack of research is it's laser focused on that exact tension. We're looking at a really unique collection of writings, essays, appendices, some research notes from a researcher grappling with something they call biological ontology.
Which sounds incredibly intimidating.
It does. So before we go any further, can we just break that down? Biological ontology. What are we actually talking about here?
Sure. I mean, ontology is just a fancy philosophical word for the study of what is real.
Okay.
So biological ontology is asking a really fundamental question. Is the reality of a human being found in a psychological label we invented, like, say, depression or bias?
Right.
Or is the reality found in the biological living organism itself?
The map versus the territory.
Yeah.
Are we looking at the menu or are we eating the food?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to explore this, the source material is, well, it's eclectic.
I'll say.
We have essays on the ethics of AI. We have these brutal critiques of standard psychology research methods. And then completely out of left field, we have letters from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke.
And mindfulness teachings from Tara Brach, right?
And then Tara Brach. It's a wild mix.
It sounds like a chaotic dinner party. You've got a coder, a grumpy scientist, a poet, and a meditation teacher all arguing at the same table.
But they're all arguing about the same thing.
Which is
truth. Is truth a clean data set? Or is truth the mystery of, living the questions?
I love that setup. Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the tech divot. A really surprising take on how to use AI without losing your soul.
Right.
Then we're going to get into the heavy stuff. Why the psychological labels we use every day might be scientifically meaningless.
That's going to be a fun.
And finally, we'll look at how we actually heal when the metrics fail us.
Let's dive in.
Segment 1. The AI collaborator. Now, usually when we talk about AI in research, the conversation is pretty binary. It's cheating or it's the future. But this source starts with an analogy that just stopped me in my tracks. They compare the current panic over AI misuse to the historical abuse of alcohol.
It is a striking comparison, isn't it? The author mentions this professor who realized students were abusing AI.
It's getting it to write their papers.
Right, using it to just generate answers without thinking. But the author argues that banning AI because some people misuse it is like prohibition. It's an inflexible reaction.
Because the problem isn't the bottle and the problem isn't the bot.
It's the user.
It's the user.
Precisely. And the author reframes what we call hallucinations. When the AI just confidently lies to you.
Ouais.
We usually blame the technology. We say, stupid computer, it's broken. This author says, no, that is a human error. That's carelessness and lack of focused attention.
That's harsh, but
It's
fair. If I use a chainsaw to cut a steak and I make a mess, I can't really blame the chainsaw.
Exactly. It's a tool, and you're using it wrong. And to use it right, the source distinguishes between two types of work, derivative and generative.
And this seems crucial.
It's a really important distinction for anyone using these tools.
So break that down. What's derivative in this context?
Derivative is basically the low-risk tasks. Literature searches, generating citations, translating a paragraph from German to English.
Okay.
The AI is just moving information around. It's safe. It's essentially a very, very fancy calculator for text.
Okay. And generative?
Generative is when you ask the AI to create meaning. Write an essay on truth.
What should I think about this?
Give me an opinion. The author says this is the danger zone. They are very clear. They never use AI to generate their homework submissions or their core arguments.
So, if they aren't using it to write the paper, what are they using it for?
For supportive exploration. They treat the AI as a sounding board. Imagine you have this really smart, incredibly well-read friend who has read everything on the internet but doesn't really understand what it means to be human.
Okay.
You bounce ideas off them to test your own logic.
So it's a stress test for your own thinking.
Yeah.
You aren't asking it for the answer. You're asking it to poke holes in your answer.
Exactly. It helps with deductive reasoning. It helps identify implications the author hadn't thought of. But, and this is the technical part that I found fascinating, to do this well, you have to understand the inputs.
Right.
The author breaks down 4 things that condition what the AI spits back at you.
I want to get into this because I think most people just see a text box, you type in a question, you get an answer, but there's a lot more happening under the hood.
There is. So input number 1 is the internal representation of the user.
Wait, the AI has a representation of me. That sounds a little sci-fi.
It's not sentient, but over months of interaction, if you're using a consistent account, the model builds a pattern of who you are. It uses inductive reasoning, looking at your past prompts, to infer your personality, your values.
So it's not starting from scratch every time I log in.
Yeah.
It knows I'm the guy who asks about obscure biology papers and terrible dad jokes.
It absolutely does. It tailors its voice to you. It learns your shorthand. Input number 2 is the specific prompt, what you actually type. And the author notes that hypothetical propositions are really powerful here.
So asking, suppose X is true, what follows?
Exactly. Rather than, is X true?
That's a huge difference. You're directing the logic train. Okay, what's the third input?
The training corpus. This is the entire internet that the model was trained on. And the author points out a pretty grim reality here.
Which is?
This corpus inherits all the harmful aspects of our culture. The bias, the racism, the nonsense. It's all in the DNA of the model because it's in the DNA of the internet.
Which makes sense. If you read the whole internet, you're going to learn some bad habits.
Yeah.
It's like raising a kid in a library that also sells tabloids.
And finally, input 4 is temperature. That's just a setting that determines how random or creative the AI can be.
Right.
But here's the massive takeaway from the author's experiments. They observed that the AI consistently prioritizes the user's explicit wishes over its training data.
So even if the internet is full of junk, if I'm intentional and specific in my prompt, I can override that.
Yes. The author says this turns the AI from a vending machine for information into a tool for reflection. It mirrors your own thoughts back to you if you direct it properly.
That's empowering. It puts the responsibility back on the human. It's not about the machine taking over. It's about the human stepping up. But speaking of responsibility, the author takes this sharpened thinking tool and points it at a pretty sacred cow, psychology itself.
And this is where we pivot to segment 2. And fair warning to any psychology majors listening, this might sting a little.
The author goes after folk psychology. Now, when I hear folk, I think of acoustic guitars and campfires. That's not what we mean here.
No. In philosophy of science, folk psychology refers to the common, everyday terms we use to explain behavior, which might not actually be scientific.
Okay.
The author critiques a text by McGregor. McGregor presents research as this nice, clean, linear progress. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants getting smarter every year.
And the author says, not so fast.
They prefer Thomas Kuhn's view. Kuhn argued that science isn't a straight line. It's a series of messy paradigm shifts. Paradigms aren't just ideas, they're lived structures grounded in biological reality.
Meaning, science is done by humans with biological brains, not robots in a vacuum. We have blind spots.
We have blind spots, and because of those blind spots, we invent words that sound scientific but might just be empty labels. The author and the AI collaborate to deconstruct terms like bias, prejudice, and assumptions.
Wait, bias is an empty label. That's a huge claim. We use that word constantly. Algorithmic bias, cognitive bias, confirmation bias. It feels very real.
Well, the author cites Denny Burzboom, a methodologist. Burzboom argues that these terms lack mechanistic grounding.
Mechanistic grounding. Break that down for us.
Okay, think of a car. If your car won't start, and the mechanic says, I see the problem, it has non-start-itis.
Right.
Has he explained anything?
No, he's just described the problem with a fancy name. I still don't know how to fix it.
Exactly. He hasn't told you mechanistically what's wrong. Is it the spark plug? The fuel injector? The battery? Burzboom argues that bias is like non-start-itis. It's a nominal category.
So just a name.
Just a name we give to a cluster of behaviors, but we haven't identified a specific biological mechanism in the brain that causes it.
So we're confusing the description with the explanation. We see someone acting a certain way and we say, that's bias, but we don't know what neurons are firing to make that happen.
Yes, and the author extends this to personality theory. Take the big 5 personality traits. Extroversion. Agreeableness.
Sure.
We can describe someone as an extrovert very accurately, but we have no explanation of the origins or causes of that trait.
So saying he goes to parties because he's an extrovert is circular logic.
It is. It's tautological. He goes to parties because he is the kind of person who goes to parties. We haven't explained the biology. The traits might just be statistical artifacts, groupings of data that look real on a chart but don't exist as a single thing in the brain.
That is wild. It makes you realize how much of our science is just language games. We think we understand the mind because we've labeled the parts, but maybe we've just put stickers on a black box.
The author calls this epistemically weak. If we only name harmful traits without understanding their biological reality, we are pretending to understand more than we do.
We're building castles on clouds.
Exactly.
So we've got AI that's only as good as the user, and psychological labels that are basically ghosts. This is getting pretty deconstructive. We're tearing everything down.
And that is exactly where the source material does a complete 180. We go from this intense, rigorous critique of science to poetry.
Specifically, an appendix featuring Rainer Maria Rilke, a letter from 1903. This feels like such a gear shift.
It feels like it, but it's actually the antidote. If the problem with modern psychology is that it tries to force rigid labels onto messy reality, Rilke offers a different path.
I have the quote here. It's famous, but reading it in this context right after discussing nominal categories, it hits differently. Rilke writes, "Love the questions."
Try to love the questions that dwell within you, like locked rooms or like books written in a very foreign language.
And then he says, and this is the part that just contradicts the whole linear progress of science, "Do not search now for answers that cannot be given to you because you would not yet be able to live them."
Live the questions now. Perhaps then, gradually, without noticing it, you will live your way into the answers.
Leave your way into the answer. That gives me chills.
It connects so deeply to the author's earlier point about ambiguity. In the world of rigid metrics, the world of bias, checklists, and personality scores, ambiguity is the enemy. It's noise in the data.
Yeah, you want certainty.
You want p-values and certainty. But Rilke says, and the author agrees, that ambiguity is generative.
Generative, like the generative AI we talked about earlier.
In a way, yes. It creates new possibilities.
Yeah.
If you rush to label a patient or feeling, if you rush to the answer, you kill the emerging truth. You miss the biological reality of the experience because you've trapped it in a box. You've diagnosed the car with non-startitis, and you've stopped looking for the real issue.
So true science or true understanding requires patience. It requires sitting in the messiness without freaking out.
Which brings us to the final segment. Because this isn't just an intellectual exercise for researchers in ivory towers, this has real-world consequences for how we treat people who are suffering.
We're talking about clinical practice. And the author highlights a massive gap between research and practice.
They cite Kasdan from 2008. The goal of research is usually truth-finding facts, proving theories. But the goal of practice should be healing. And the author argues that modern therapy has become obsessed with symptom reduction.
And this is the critique of that Sloan study from 2011. This was a meta-analysis on group treatment for PTSD.
Right. So Sloan looks at all these studies and asks, did the treatment work? But the measuring stick was entirely based on DSM symptoms. Did the nightmare stop? Did the heart rate go down?
Those seem like important things to measure, though. I mean, if I have PTSD, I want the nightmares to stop.
Of course. But the author points out a massive blind spot. The study completely ignored quality of life and attachment outcomes.
Ah. So you might technically check fewer boxes on the symptom list, but are you connecting with your kids? Do you feel safe in the world? Are you happy?
The study didn't look at that. The author calls this logical positivism and worship of numbers. If it can't be counted, it doesn't count.
Wow.
And they argue this is why so many trauma survivors feel failed by the system. You can be cured on paper, your symptom score drop by 20%, and still be miserable in reality.
It's like the surgery was successful, but the patient died. Or the patient is technically alive but can't leave the house.
Exactly. And there was a specific point about gender in that critique that I thought was really telling about how metrics can blind us.
Yes, the Sloan study noted that group treatment seemed to benefit women more than men. And a researcher focused on metrics would just say,
okay, men are resistant to treatment.
right.
But the author asks, what if men and women just manifest trauma differently?
So the map says PTSD looks like X. And if a man's trauma looks like Y, the map says he's not getting better.
Or he's not even sick, but the territory, the biological reality is that he's suffering. We are missing the human because we are staring at the spreadsheet.
We're valuing the definition over the person. So what's the alternative? If we don't just count symptoms, what do? We can't just do nothing.
The author introduces Tara Brach and the concept of radical acceptance. Now, Brack is a psychologist, but her work leans heavily on mindfulness and Buddhist tradition.
And the source acknowledges that this isn't proven in the same way a drug trial is proven.
No, it's not in the meta-analyses. It doesn't fit neatly into a chart, but it is affirmed by the testimony of survivors. And radical acceptance isn't about resignation. It's not, I give up. It's about befriending feelings.
Befriending feelings. That sounds very Rilkean again.
It is. Instead of saying, I have anxiety, I must eliminate it, which is symptom reduction, a war against the self. You say, I am feeling anxiety. Can I greet this discomfort with care?
It's moving from fixing a broken machine to caring for a living organism.
Exactly. And this requires what the author calls intellectual humility. They define humility as the awareness of one's limitations. It's the willingness to admit, I don't know the answer yet. I don't know what this feeling means yet.
Which brings us right back to the scientist. A good scientist shouldn't be the one with the most rigid answers. They should be the one asking the best questions.
The author cites the philosophers Gadamer and Bakhtin here, proposing reading as dialogue and playful curiosity. Whether you're reading a text or using AI or treating a patient, you shouldn't be trying to extract data like a mining operation.
You should be entering a conversation.
Yes. You let the understanding emerge between you. It's a relationship, not a transaction.
That's the core message, isn't it?
I think so. That truth in psychology and maybe in life isn't a static fact you find under a rock. It's a dynamic, living process. It's biological. It grows and changes.
This has been a fascinating ride. We started with AI, where we learned that the machine is just a mirror. If you want better answers, you need to be a more thoughtful human.
And we realized that we can't outsource our thinking to an algorithm or to a folk psychology label. Just calling someone biased or neurotic doesn't explain the wonder and complexity of their biology.
It's just a name.
It's just a name. And finally, we learned that real healing and real science requires us to embrace the mess, to stop worshiping the numbers and start valuing connection.
The readiness score on my watch isn't me.
No, you are the territory. The watch is just a very flawed map.
I think I'm going to take that watch off tonight. Let my biology do its own thing.
Probably a good idea. Listen to the body, not the Bluetooth.
I want to leave our listener with a challenge, inspired by Rilke and this deep dive. Think about a problem you're wrestling with right now. A decision, a relationship, a confusing feeling.
Are you trying to force an answer? Are you trying to apply a metric or a rigid label to something that is still unfolding?
What would happen if, just for today, you stopped searching for the solution? What if you just lived the question?
You might find that the ambiguity isn't a wall, it's a door.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.